The rain hammered Connor Bridger's windshield with the kind of fury that made smart men pull over and wait it out. He kept driving. 38 years old, and he still hadn't learned when to quit fighting losing battles. Not with weather, not with ex-wives, not with the ghosts of women who'd left him a decade ago. Harper was safe at his mother's house now. The volcano project material spread across Ruth's kitchen table like a miniature disaster zone. His daughter could explain plate tectonics better than most adults, but she still needed her father to pick her up from school when the rain came down sideways. The storm had other plans for his evening commute. That's when the flashing lights cut through the gray curtain of water. ABM WX5 sat crippled on the highway shoulder, hood yawning open like a broken jaw. Hazard lights blinked their desperate rhythm into the storm. A figure in a business suit stood hunched over the engine bay, completely soaked, long hair plastered to her back as water streamed off her shoulders. Most drivers would accelerate past. Not their problem, especially in weather that threatened to wash the asphalt clean off I-70. Connor's foot found the brake before his mind caught up to the decision. His father's voice echoed from 20 years gone. You see someone needs help, you help. Doesn't matter who they are or what it costs you. The truck's tires crunched gravel as he pulled onto the shoulder, 20 feet behind the BMW. Connor grabbed the umbrella from behind his seat, barely used, a gift from Harper last Christmas, with cartoon dinosaurs dancing across the fabric. The absurdity of bringing dinosaurs to rescue a stranded motorist almost made him smile. Rain attacked him the moment he opened the door. Cold needles found every gap in his flannel shirt, soaking through to skin in seconds. He raised the umbrella and walked toward the figure bent over the engine. Need some help? The woman straightened and turned. Time didn't stop. That was movie nonsense. But something in Connor's chest seized up hard enough that his next breath came shallow and painful. The umbrella trembled in his grip as he stared into eyes he'd spent a decade trying to forget. Green eyes. Not blue, not hazel. That specific shade of green that reminded him of spring grass after winter finally released its grip. The kind of green that had haunted his dreams for 10 years. Connor? Her name escaped as barely a whisper, stolen by the wind before it could reach her. But she heard it. The way her whole body went rigid told him she heard it. Meredith. Not a question, a statement heavy with disbelief and something else he couldn't name. This can't be real. The woman standing before him wore a business suit that clung to her frame like a second skin, fabric darkened by rain. Her brown hair, longer than he remembered, hung in wet ropes past her shoulders. The sharp angles of her face had softened with age, but those eyes hadn't changed at all. Meredith Lancaster. The woman he'd planned to marry, the woman who'd left him 3 weeks before their wedding, claiming she wasn't ready for commitment, that she needed to find herself, that staying would suffocate them both. Professional instinct kicked in, saving him from drowning in the past. What's wrong with the vehicle? Battery died, just cut out in the middle of the highway. Her voice carried the same low timbre he remembered, but something harder had crept into it. Years of giving orders, maybe. Years of being someone he didn't know. Connor moved to the engine, muscle memory taking over. He'd fixed enough vehicles on job sites to diagnose this blind. I've got jumper cables, hold on. The silence while he retrieved his equipment felt thick enough to choke on. Meredith stood under the umbrella he'd thrust at her, watching him work with an expression he couldn't read. The rain kept falling. His shirt was soaked through now, cold water running down his spine. So you're back in town. Connor connected the cables with practiced efficiency, not looking at her. Last I heard, you were in California. Moved back 2 years ago. Made CEO with a security firm in Denver. A pause, heavy as the storm clouds overhead. What about you? Foreman at Morrison Construction. He recited the facts like reading from a grocery list. Married. Daughter named Harper, 7 years old. Divorced 2 years back. The BMW's engine turned over on the first try, roaring to life with mechanical indifference to the emotional wreckage surrounding it. Connor disconnected the cables, movements sharp and precise, refusing to meet her gaze. Merida's hand touched his arm as he turned to leave. Just a brief contact, but it burned through the wet fabric. Connor, I know I'm the last person you want to see. The last person I wanted to see left 10 years ago. His voice came out colder than he'd intended, frost coating each word. You're just a motorist who needed a jump, nothing more. He watched something flicker across her face. Pain maybe, or regret, but she composed herself with the discipline of someone trained to hide weakness. From her wallet, she produced a business card, flipping it to write on the blank back with a pen that barely worked in the rain. If you ever need anything, I owe you more than just this. The card read, Meredith Lancaster, CEO, Lancaster Security Solutions, Denver, Colorado, in crisp professional font. Her personal cell number was scrawled on the reverse in handwriting he recognized. Loops and curves exactly as they'd been a decade ago. Connor pocketed the card without promises. Take care of yourself. Walking back to his truck felt like wading through concrete. Every step required conscious effort, his boots heavy with more than just rain and mud. In the rearview mirror, Meredith remained by her BMW, one hand pressed to her chest as she watched him drive away. His phone buzzed before he'd made it 3 miles. Harper texting from Ruth's cell. Did you remember to buy milk? Grandma says we're out. The mundane reality of his life snapped back into focus. Milk, homework, getting Harper to school on time tomorrow. The careful routine he'd built since Vanessa walked out, leaving him with a 5-year-old and a mortgage he could barely afford. Meredith Lancaster had no place in that world. She'd made that choice a long time ago. Ruth Bridger's house smelled like the cinnamon rolls she'd baked that afternoon. Sweet warmth wrapped around Connor as he stepped inside, shaking water from his jacket. His mother looked up from where she sat with Harper at the kitchen table, math homework spread between them like a battlefield. Daddy! Harper launched herself at him with the full-body enthusiasm only a 7-year-old could muster. I got all my multiplication problems right, even the hard ones. Connor caught her, swung her up despite the protest of muscles that had spent all day hauling concrete blocks. That's my girl. Knew you could do it. Ruth studied him with the unsettling perception of someone who changed his diapers and weathered every storm of his 38 years. You're quieter than usual. Something happened. Harper peered at him with equally suspicious eyes. Her mother's eyes, brown and sharp, missing nothing. Did you meet someone, Daddy? You look sad. The word hit harder than it should have. Just ran into an old friend, nobody important. An old friend who made you look like someone died. Ruth stood, moving to pour coffee without asking if he wanted it. That kind of old friend usually has a name. Connor waited until Harper was distracted with her backpack, checking that she'd packed everything for tomorrow. Meredith Lancaster. His mother's hand paused halfway to the coffee pot. When she turned, her expression carried the particular mixture of sympathy and concern that mothers reserve for their children's deepest wounds. The one who left you before the wedding. She's a CEO now. Car broke down on the highway. He accepted the coffee, letting the heat seep into his frozen fingers. Pure coincidence. There's no such thing as coincidence, Connor. Ruth's voice carried the weight of experience. Not when it comes to matters that tore your heart out and left it bleeding. Harper glanced up, confusion creasing her forehead. Grandma, what are you talking about? Adult stuff, sweetheart. Ruth smoothed the girl's hair with gentle hands. Nothing for you to worry about. But Harper wasn't easily distracted. She possessed her father's stubbornness wrapped in her mother's determination, a combination that would either change the world or drive him to an early grave. Was Miss Lancaster Daddy's girlfriend before Mommy? Connor set down his coffee before he could spill it. How do you know about that? Grandma told me you had your heart broken once, before you met Mommy. Harper's voice carried the careful tone of someone trying not to upset a skittish animal. Is Miss Lancaster the one who broke your heart? Ruth had the grace to look sheepish. She asked why you never dated anyone after the divorce. I thought she was old enough to understand that sometimes people get hurt and it makes them scared to try again. I'm not scared. The lie tasted bitter even as he spoke it. I'm focused on being a good father. That's different. Harper climbed into his lap, all sharp elbows and bony knees, wrapping her arms around his neck. I don't want you to be sad, Daddy. Grandma says you used to smile more before Mommy left. The coffee cup sat forgotten on the table as Connor held his daughter, breathing in the strawberry scent of her shampoo. This was his life now. PTA meetings and science projects and making sure Harper knew she was loved, even when her mother only saw her every other weekend. Meredith Lancaster belonged to a different version of himself, one who'd believed love conquered all and promises lasted forever. I smile plenty, kiddo, especially when I'm with you. Later, after Harper had fallen asleep in the truck on the drive home, after he'd carried her to bed and tucked her in with her worn, stuffed rabbit, Connor stood alone in his kitchen and pulled out Meredith's card. The handwriting mocked him with its familiarity. How many notes had she left him during their 2 years together? Stuck to his apartment door, tucked into his textbooks, scrawled on napkins at the campus coffee shop where they'd first met. Gone to class. Love you. Don't forget we have dinner with my parents tonight. You left your jacket at my place again. You'd forget your head if it wasn't attached. He'd kept every single one until the day she returned his engagement ring. Left it on his kitchen counter with a note that said simply, I'm sorry, I can't do this. Then he'd burn them all, watch the paper curl and blacken in his bathroom sink, while his world fell apart around him. The business card should join those ashes. There was no good reason to keep it, no possible future where reaching out to Meredith Lancaster would lead anywhere except pain. Connor filed it in his wallet anyway, tucked behind his insurance card where he wouldn't see it every time he bought groceries. 3 days crawled by with the relentless monotony of routine. Wake at 5, make breakfast, get Harper ready for school, drop her at the bus stop, drive to whatever construction site Jim Morrison had them working. Today it was the Lincoln Elementary renovation, replacing rotted window frames and outdated wiring in a building that should have been condemned a decade ago. His crew worked around him with comfortable efficiency born of years together. Wade Sullivan, the crew leader, had been doing this dance since before Connor graduated high school. The man could eyeball a beam and know if it was a quarter-inch off level. You've been distracted all week. Wade didn't look up from the window frame he was measuring, but his tone carried accusation. That's how people get hurt. Want to tell me what's eating you? Connor adjusted his grip on the cordless drill, fitting another screw into place with more force than necessary. Nothing. Just tired. I've seen you work 12-hour days and still have energy to joke around. This is different. Wade straightened, wiping sweat from his forehead with a bandana that had seen better years. Woman trouble? When isn't it woman trouble? Fair point. Vanessa giving you grief about Harper again? The mention of his ex-wife brought its own complicated tangle of emotions. Vanessa had moved back to town 6 months ago after her relationship in Denver imploded. Suddenly very interested in being part of Harper's life again after 2 years of sporadic phone calls and forgotten birthdays. Vanessa's been quiet lately, surprisingly. Connor moved to the next window, losing himself in the familiar rhythm of work. This is something else. His phone buzzed in his pocket during lunch break. Unknown number, but the area code was local. Bridger. Connor, it's Meredith. Her voice sounded different over the phone, more uncertain than it had during their rain-soaked reunion. I hope this isn't a bad time. Every muscle in his body went tense. Around him, the crew continued their various lunch activities. Wade arguing with Danny about last night's game. Marcus scrolling through his phone. Pete napping in his truck. Normal, everyday chaos. Connor walked away from them, seeking privacy behind a stack of lumber. What do you need? I wanted to thank you properly for helping with my car. Buy you dinner or something. A pause, and he could almost see her gathering courage on the other end. And maybe talk about what happened. You deserve an explanation. That was 10 years ago. Water under the bridge. Is it? The challenge in her voice sparked something in his chest. Old anger he'd thought long buried. Because the way you looked at me in that rain, Connor, that wasn't someone who's moved on. His free hand clenched into a fist. She had no right to call him out. Not after everything. What do you want from me, Meredith? Just coffee. Just 1 hour of your time. I need to explain why I left. You never gave me the chance to. You didn't want a chance. You wanted an escape route, and you took it. The words came out harsher than he'd intended, loud enough that Wade glanced over with concern creasing his weathered face. Connor turned away, lowering his voice. I spent a year trying to understand, then I stopped trying and got on with my life. By marrying someone you didn't love. The accusation stole his breath. How could she possibly know that? You don't know anything about my marriage. I know you, Connor. Or I did. And I know what it looks like when you're in love. Her voice softened, vulnerable in a way that transported him back to late nights in her apartment, bodies tangled together as they planned impossible futures. The way you said your ex-wife's name just now, there's no warmth there, not even anger, just nothing. He wanted to deny it, to tell her she was wrong about Vanessa, about him, about everything. But the lie wouldn't form. What do you want me to say? Say you'll have coffee with me Saturday. You pick the place, you set the terms. I just want a chance to apologize properly. Every instinct screamed at him to refuse. This was how it started. Small concessions that led to bigger mistakes, old feelings resurging like floodwaters through broken levees. He'd rebuilt his life carefully after Meredith left, after Vanessa left, constructing walls that kept him safe and functioning and present for Harper. But some traitorous part of him, the part that had never quite healed, wanted to know why, needed closure or revenge or something he couldn't name. Saturday, 1 hour, Tony's Italian on 5th. I'll be there at 7. Thank you, Connor. I'll see you then. The line went dead. Connor stared at his phone for a long moment, wondering what the hell he'd just agreed to. Wade appeared at his elbow, concern etched into every line of his face. Everything okay? Connor trailed off, unable to finish the sentence. It's complicated. Woman who got away came back. When Connor didn't answer, Wade nodded like that confirmed everything. Thought so. You've had that look all week. The one guys get when their past shows up demanding a conversation. She wants to apologize for leaving. And you said yes because you're hoping it'll give you closure. Wade clapped him on the shoulder, grip firm and grounding. Word of advice from someone who's made this mistake. There's no such thing as closure. There's only choosing whether you're going to let the past eat you alive, or if you're going to bury it and move forward. Which did you choose? I tried burying it. Worked for about 15 years till my ex-wife showed up at my daughter's wedding. Wade's laugh held no humor. Turns out some graves aren't deep enough. Now I'm stuck seeing her at every family event, making polite conversation while pretending I don't remember exactly how she destroyed me. The warning was clear, but Connor had already committed to Saturday, already opened the door he'd spent a decade keeping locked. He went back to work, throwing himself into the physical labor with enough intensity that by day's end, every muscle screamed for mercy. Maybe if he exhausted himself enough, he wouldn't lie awake thinking about green eyes and handwritten phone numbers. Harper noticed something was off the moment he picked her up from school. She climbed into the truck with her usual explosion of energy, backpack hitting the seat with a thud, but her smile faltered when she got a good look at his face. Bad day at work, Daddy? Just long. How was school? She launched into a detailed account of her day. Someone's hamster escaped during science class. Her best friend Lily got in trouble for passing notes. The cafeteria served pizza that tasted like cardboard. Normal 7-year-old problems that should have grounded him in the present. Instead, his mind kept drifting to Saturday, to what he'd say when he saw Meredith sitting across from him at Tony's, under the warm Italian lighting that made everyone look softer than they were. At home, Harper spread her homework across the kitchen table while Connor started dinner. Spaghetti, because it was Thursday, and Thursday meant pasta in their carefully constructed routine. The water was just starting to boil when Harper's voice cut through his thoughts. "Daddy, are you scared of something?" His hand slipped, nearly knocking the box of noodles off the counter. "What makes you ask that?" "Grandma says when people get really quiet and far away, it's usually because they're scared." Harper didn't look up from her math worksheet, pencil moving in careful loops. "You've been far away a lot lately." Connor turned off the stove, abandoning dinner to sit beside his daughter. She was too perceptive, too aware of emotional undercurrents for a kid her age. He blamed Vanessa for that. Harper had learned young to read moods, to gauge when her mother's attention might evaporate without warning. "I'm not scared, baby. Just thinking about grown-up stuff. Is it about Miss Lancaster, the lady who broke your heart?" The directness of it caught him off guard. "How do you know about her?" "I asked Grandma more questions after you left the other night." Harper finally set down her pencil, fixing him with eyes that saw far too much. "She said you were going to marry Miss Lancaster, but she got scared and ran away. And then you were sad for a really long time before you met Mommy, Ruth in her big mouth." Though in fairness, Harper could extract information from a stone if she set her mind to it. "That's basically what happened. Yeah. Are you going to see her again?" No point lying. Harper would find out eventually. And he'd promised himself after the divorce that he'd always be honest with her, even when the truth was complicated. "We're having coffee on Saturday. She wants to apologize." Harper considered this with the gravity of a judge weighing evidence. Do you want her to apologize? Did he? Connor wasn't sure anymore. The anger that had sustained him through the first year had long since cooled to something more like scar tissue. Still there, still tender when pressed, but not actively bleeding. "I want to understand why she left. Maybe that'll help me stop wondering about it." "Okay." Harper returned to her homework as if they'd been discussing what to have for breakfast. "But if she makes you sad again, you should tell her to go away. You deserve to be happy, Daddy." The simple wisdom of children. Connor pulled her into a hug, holding tight while she squirmed and laughed. "When did you get so smart?" "I was born this way. You're just slow at noticing." Saturday arrived with the inexorable march of calendar pages. Connor spent the morning at Harper's soccer game. She played defense with more enthusiasm than skill, mostly running in circles and occasionally remembering to chase the ball. They lost 4-2, but Harper scored a goal that had her glowing for the entire drive home. Vanessa showed up halfway through, standing on the opposite sideline in designer sunglasses that probably cost more than Connor's monthly grocery budget. After the game, as Harper was distracted with juice boxes and orange slices, Vanessa approached with the careful steps of someone navigating a minefield. "She's getting better." Vanessa's smile didn't quite reach her eyes, the expression she wore when forcing pleasantries. "You've been practicing with her." "Every weekend she's with me, rain or shine." Connor kept his tone neutral, refusing to rise to whatever bait she was laying. "You could practice with her too, on your weekends." "I would if she didn't spend half her time with me asking when she gets to go back to your place." The words carried an edge, resentment bleeding through the polite facade. "She's obsessed with that volcano project you're doing together." Connor's stomach dropped. He hadn't mentioned Meredith's brief visit, the way she'd stopped by when Harper was working on her science fair project. The conversation about chemical reactions that had lasted maybe 10 minutes while Meredith waited for Connor to find the security code she needed for her investigation. "We worked on it together. It's for the science fair." Vanessa's expression shifted from vaguely annoyed to sharp and predatory. "Meredith as in Meredith Lancaster? Your ex-fiancée? She's back in town, works for a security company." Connor felt the ground shifting beneath him, quicksand opening up. "And you introduced our daughter to the woman who left you at the altar?" Vanessa's voice climbed in pitch, drawing attention from nearby parents. "Are you insane?" It wasn't at the altar, it was 3 weeks before, and I didn't introduce them on purpose. Meredith stopped by while I was helping Harper with homework. The lie came easier than it should have. Vanessa didn't need to know about the coffee shop meeting he'd agreed to. This is exactly what I was afraid of when I moved back. Vanessa crossed her arms, body language shifting into full combat mode. You dating random women and exposing Harper to unstable relationships. Ice shot through Connor's veins. We need to talk about modifying the custody arrangement. There's nothing to modify. Our agreement is working fine. Our daughter is spending time with your ex-girlfriend, Connor. That's not fine. That's confusing for a child her age. Vanessa pulled out her phone, typing something with sharp, angry jabs. I'm calling my lawyer Monday morning. She stalked off before he could respond, leaving him standing in the aftermath of a bomb he hadn't seen coming. Across the field, Harper laughed with her teammates, oblivious to the legal threat gathering on the horizon. This was why he should have stayed away from Meredith. Nothing good came from reopening old wounds. Only fresh bleeding and collateral damage to everyone around him. But he'd committed to tonight, and Connor Bridger didn't break promises, even ones that might destroy everything he'd built. Tony's Italian restaurant occupied a converted house on 5th Street, all warm brick and trailing ivy that made it look like something transplanted from another era. Connor had been coming here since before Harper was born, back when he and Vanessa were still pretending their marriage wasn't a slow-motion car crash. The owner, Tony Ricci, greeted him at the door with the familiar enthusiasm of an old friend. Connor, haven't seen you in a month. You're finally bringing a lady friend? Something like that. She should be here soon. Tony showed him to a corner table, the kind that offered privacy without being suspiciously isolated. Connor ordered a beer and checked his watch. 7 o'clock exactly. If Meredith was the same person she'd been 10 years ago, she'd arrive 5 minutes early, constitutionally incapable of being late. At 6:55, the door chimed. Meredith stepped inside and Connor's carefully constructed composure crumbled like sugar glass. She dressed in jeans and a dark sweater, hair loose around her shoulders, instead of pulled back in the severe style she'd worn in her BMW. Without the business armor, she looked younger, more like the woman he'd fallen for in a campus coffee shop when they were both too young to know better. She spotted him, and something complicated flickered across her face. Relief mixed with fear, mixed with something else he didn't want to name. Her approach seemed to take forever and no time at all. You actually came. She slid into the seat across from him, fingers worrying at the strap of her purse. I wasn't sure you would. I keep my word, even when I probably shouldn't. Connor took a long pull from his beer, needing something to do with his hands. You wanted to explain, so explain. Meredith's hands trembled slightly as she reached for the water glass Tony had brought with her arrival. The movement drew Connor's attention to details he'd been trying to ignore. The absence of rings on her fingers, the faint scar along her left thumb that hadn't been there before, the way she still bit her lower lip when nervous. I don't know where to start. Her voice came out smaller than he'd ever heard it, the confident CEO replaced by someone who looked lost. I've rehearsed this conversation 1,000 times in my head, and now that you're sitting here, all those words feel inadequate. Connor leaned back in his chair, arms crossed in a posture he recognized as defensive, even as he adopted it. Try the beginning, the part where you decided 3 weeks before our wedding that you couldn't go through with it. The waiter appeared with menus, oblivious to the emotional minefield he'd wandered into. Meredith ordered wine without looking at the options. Connor requested another beer, and they sat in silence until the server retreated. I was terrified. She spoke to the table rather than meeting his eyes. Not of you, not of marriage specifically, but of the permanence, of making a choice that would define the rest of my life before I'd figured out who I was. You were 26. I was 28. Plenty of people get married younger. Even as he spoke, Connor recognized the hollowness of the argument. Age was just a number. Maturity was something else entirely. My parents divorced when I was 12. Meredith's fingers traced patterns on the condensation of her water glass. I watched my mother try to build a life after 15 years of being someone's wife. And she didn't know who she was anymore. Everything had been defined by my father. Where we lived, what she did, who her friends were. When he left, she was just empty. The waiter returned with drinks. Meredith took a long sip of wine before continuing, gathering courage from somewhere deep inside. I swore I'd never end up like that. I'd establish myself first, have a career, know exactly who I was as an individual before I became someone's wife. She finally looked at him, and the raw honesty in her expression hit like a physical blow. Then I met you, and all those carefully constructed plans went out the window. We were engaged within a year, planning a wedding, talking about kids and houses and forever. And suddenly I was 26 and terrified I was making the same mistake my mother did. Connor's grip tightened on his beer bottle. The explanation made sense in a way that infuriated him. Logical and reasonable, and completely insufficient to excuse the devastation she'd left in her wake. So you ran to California, found yourself at business school. I joined Stanford thinking it would make me strong, independent, someone who didn't need anyone else to feel complete. Bitterness crept into her tone, self-directed and sharp. Spent 5 years building a career, made CEO, dated men who meant nothing, and forgot them the moment they walked out the door. Convinced myself I'd made the right choice. And now? The question emerged rougher than intended, carrying a decade's worth of unresolved anger and hurt, and something dangerously close to hope. Now I'm 36 years old, sitting across from the man I never stopped loving, trying to explain why I was too much of a coward to fight for us when it mattered. The words hung between them like smoke from a fire neither could extinguish. Connor wanted to grab them, examine them, demand clarification, but the waiter chose that moment to return, asking if they were ready to order. They selected food neither wanted, going through the motions of civilized dining, while emotional chaos roared beneath the surface. Once alone again, Connor forced himself to ask the question that had haunted him for a decade. Why come back here? There are CEO positions in every major city. Why this one? The directness seemed to catch her off guard. Color crept into Meredith's cheeks, visible even in the restaurant's warm lighting. I knew you were here. I'd been keeping tabs. Nothing creepy, just occasional searches on social media, seeing what you were up to. His stomach dropped. You've been watching me for 10 years? Not watching, just checking in, making sure you were okay. She rushed the words out, defensive and ashamed. I saw when you got married, when Harper was born, when your relationship status changed to divorced. And I told myself I was happy for you, that you'd moved on and built a good life. But I was lying. The confession came out barely above a whisper. When the position opened up here, I had offers from Portland and San Diego. Both paid more. Both had better prospects. I chose Denver because I needed to know if what we had was real or if I'd built it up in my memory to justify my regret. Food arrived. Chicken parmesan for her, lasagna for him. Both plates steaming and fragrant. Neither made a move to eat. The revelation had shifted something between them, changing the atmosphere from confrontational to dangerous in ways Connor couldn't fully process. You didn't answer my question that night in the rain. He met her eyes, refusing to let her hide. I asked if you came back because of me, and you deflected. Now I'm asking again. Did you manipulate the job to get close to me? Meredith's spine straightened, CEO mode sliding into place like armor. I didn't manipulate anything. The company offered the position based on my qualifications. But did I accept it, hoping I might run into you? Yes. Did I imagine what I'd say if we met again? Every single day for 2 years. And then my truck saved you from having to manufacture a meeting. Connor picked up his fork more for something to do than from any real appetite. Convenient timing, that breakdown. Right where I'd be driving home from picking up Harper. The accusation sparked anger in her expression. quick and hot. Are you seriously suggesting I sabotaged my own vehicle to engineer a reunion? That's paranoid, even for someone with trust issues. Trust issues. Connor let the words settle between them like stones. Yeah, I wonder where those came from. They ate in tense silence, the food turning to ash in his mouth. Around them, other diners laughed and talked, oblivious to the small war being waged in the corner booth. Tony caught Connor's eye from across the room, concern evident, but Connor shook his head slightly. This wasn't the kind of problem extra breadsticks could solve. Meredith pushed her barely touched chicken around her plate, creating abstract patterns in the marinara sauce. I saw you with her, Harper, at the coffee shop last week. Connor's fork clattered against his plate. You were there? Sitting 3 tables over behind the support column. You were helping her with that volcano project, and she was so excited. And you were so patient even when she knocked over the baking soda. A smile ghosted across Meredith's face, sad and wistful. You're a good father, better than you probably give yourself credit for. The observation should have pleased him. Instead, it felt invasive, like she'd been studying his life through a window he hadn't known existed. Harper's everything to me. I won't let anyone hurt her, and that includes exposing her to people who might disappear without warning. The implication landed like he'd intended, a direct hit that made Meredith flinch. I deserve that. I deserve worse than that, honestly. But I need you to know I didn't come back planning to disrupt your life. I just wanted to see if maybe, possibly, there was still something between us worth exploring. Exploring. Connor tested the word, found it wanting. That's a clinical way to describe it. What would you call it? A mistake. A disaster waiting to happen. A way to guarantee Harper gets caught in the crossfire when you decide commitment is too scary again. He drained the rest of his beer, signaling for another even though he was driving. I spent a year after you left barely functional. Went to work, came home, stared at walls. My crew staged an intervention because I almost got someone killed being distracted on a job site. Meredith's face had gone pale. I didn't know. How could you? You were in California finding yourself while I was falling apart. The bitterness tasted familiar, a flavor he'd thought he'd purged but apparently only buried. Then I met Vanessa. Sweet, stable, uncomplicated Vanessa, who wanted the same things I did. House, family, normal life. And I married her even though I didn't love her, because I thought maybe love didn't matter as much as compatibility. Connor, let me finish. He waited until she nodded before continuing. The whole marriage I was waiting to feel something, anything close to what I felt with you. It never came. Vanessa knew it. I knew it. We just pretended everything was fine until Harper was old enough that the divorce wouldn't completely traumatize her. You want to know the worst part? I still don't regret it because Harper exists. But I regret lying to Vanessa for 6 years. I regret making her feel like she was competing with a ghost she could never beat. The confession hung between them, heavier than anything said so far. Meredith's eyes glistened with unshed tears, but she blinked them back with the discipline of someone trained not to show weakness. I'm sorry. The words sounded inadequate even to his own ears. That's all I can say. I'm sorry I hurt you. Sorry I wasn't brave enough. Sorry I've spent a decade being too much of a coward to come back and fix it. If I could go back and change things, I would do it in a heartbeat. Connor's third beer arrived. He stared at it without drinking, watching condensation bead on the bottle's surface. Why now? Why not 5 years ago, or 3, or before I got married? Because 5 years ago, I was still lying to myself. Meredith pushed her plate away, food barely touched. 3 years ago, I was dating someone else, trying to convince myself he was good enough. And before you got married, she paused, struggling with something internal. I almost called you the week before your wedding. Had the phone in my hand, your number dialed, finger hovering over the call button. Why didn't you? Because you deserve to be happy. You deserve someone who wouldn't run when things got hard. I thought maybe Vanessa could give you that. The music changed to something slow and melancholy, a vocalist crooning about lost chances and roads not taken. The irony wasn't lost on either of them. Connor's phone buzzed. Harper texting from Ruth's house where she was spending the night. Having so much fun with Grandma. We made cookies and she's teaching me to knit. He showed Meredith the message, watching her expression soften as she read it. She seems like an amazing kid. She is, too smart for her own good. Asks questions that would stump a philosophy professor. Pride crept into his voice despite his best efforts to maintain emotional distance. Wants to be a scientist. Studies volcanoes and plate tectonics like other kids study cartoon characters. The project at the coffee shop, that's why you were researching chemical reactions. She's got a presentation next month. I'm helping her build a scale model that actually erupts. He pocketed his phone, the brief interruption having given him time to resettle his defenses. But we're not here to talk about Harper. You wanted to explain yourself, so explain why you think any of this matters now. Meredith pushed her wine glass aside, abandoning any pretense of drinking. Because I've spent 10 years in a career that's supposed to be about protection and security, and the whole time I've been living a lie, pretending I made the right choice, pretending I don't lie awake at night, thinking about what our life could have been. Our life would have been ordinary, working class ordinary, not the CEO career you built. He couldn't keep the edge from his voice. I'm a foreman for a construction company. I make decent money, but it's not executive salary. We would have had a modest house, 2 kids, maybe date nights at places like this because we couldn't afford anything fancier. Is that really what you want? Or is this just nostalgia making the past look better than it was? The question seemed to genuinely stun her. She sat back, processing, and Connor could see the exact moment she understood what he was really asking. Not whether she regretted leaving, but whether she could actually handle the reality of what staying would have meant. I don't care about money. Her voice carried conviction, but he'd heard convicted criminals sound equally sincere about their innocence. I've had the career, the promotions, the respect. None of it filled the hole you left. Pretty words. Connor finally took a drink from his 3rd beer, knowing he'd regret it in the morning, but needing the liquid courage for what came next. But words are easy. Actions are what matter. You walked away once already. What makes you think I'd ever trust you enough to risk it again? I can't give you guarantees. I can't promise I won't mess up or get scared or make mistakes. Meredith leaned forward, intensity radiating from her like heat. But I can promise I'm not the same person who ran. 10 years of living with consequences taught me that running from problems doesn't solve them. It just means you carry them wherever you go. Touching. But I have Harper to think about now. She's already dealing with her mother being inconsistent and unreliable. I won't add another unstable adult to her life. He meant it as a deterrent, a wall she couldn't scale. But something shifted in Meredith's expression, determination replacing uncertainty. Then let me prove it. No expectations, no pressure. Just give me a chance to show you I've changed. She reached across the table, hands stopping just short of touching his. I'm not asking you to forgive me or take me back or even give me hope. I'm asking for the opportunity to demonstrate through actions, not words, that I'm worth a second look. The server appeared, asking about dessert. They both declined, and Connor requested the check before Meredith could argue about who was paying. She let him take it without protest, seeming to understand that this small act of control mattered to him. Outside, the October night had turned cold, temperature dropping with the sun. Meredith hugged herself against the chill, having left her jacket in the BMW. Connor's instinct was to offer his coat the way he always had, but he suppressed it. Those kinds of gestures belonged to a different version of them, one that no longer existed. Thank you for hearing me out. Meredith's breath misted in the air between them. I know it doesn't change anything, but I needed you to know I never stopped regretting what I did. Connor studied her in the streetlight's glow. cataloging the ways age had changed her. Fine lines around her eyes that hadn't been there before. A guardedness in her posture that spoke of battles fought and walls built. But underneath, he could still see traces of the woman he'd loved. The one who'd laughed at his terrible jokes, who'd fallen asleep during movies with her head on his shoulder, who'd made him believe in happily ever after. I don't know what you're expecting from this. He kept his distance, afraid that closing the gap would undo all his carefully maintained resolve. I can't just forgive and forget. Harper comes first, always. And bringing someone into her life who might leave again, I can't do that to her. I understand. Meredith pulled her keys from her purse, the jangle loud in the quiet street. But if you ever want to talk, or if you need anything, you have my number. No strings, no expectations, just, I'm here if you want me to be. She walked to her BMW and drove away without looking back. Connor stood on the sidewalk long after her taillights disappeared, trying to sort through the emotional wreckage of the evening. His phone buzzed again. Not Harper this time, but Ruth. How did it go? Connor typed and deleted 3 different responses before settling on, complicated, tell you tomorrow. The drive home passed in a blur. His house felt emptier than usual without Harper's chaos filling it. Just him and silence, and too many thoughts he couldn't organize. He poured himself a whiskey he didn't want, sat on the porch in the cold, and let himself remember. Their first kiss outside that coffee shop, her tasting like caramel and sugar. Moving into their first apartment together, nothing but secondhand furniture and big dreams. The night he proposed, down on one knee in the park where they'd had their first real conversation, ring box shaking in his nervous hands, her saying yes while crying and laughing at the same time. Then the harder memories, the growing distance in those final weeks, her increasingly frequent mentions of not being ready. The night she'd come to him with red eyes and a confession he hadn't wanted to hear. The emptiness after, like someone had scooped out his insides and left him hollow. He'd survived it, built a life, had a daughter, created routines and structures that kept him functioning. Meredith's return threatened all of that stability, opening wounds he'd thought scarred over. But watching her tonight had reminded him what it felt like to be fully alive. 3 days passed in careful normalcy. Work, Harper, dinners, homework, bedtime stories. He didn't mention Meredith to his daughter, didn't examine too closely why he'd kept the dinner a secret. Ruth asked once how it went. He deflected with practiced ease, changing the subject to Harper's upcoming school play. Thursday evening, while Harper was at Vanessa's for her bi-weekly overnight, Connor's doorbell rang. He opened it to find Meredith standing on his porch in professional attire, looking official and uncomfortable in equal measure. This isn't a social call. She kept her hands at her sides, posture rigid. There's been a series of thefts from construction sites in the area. Your site specifically was hit last night. I'm the lead investigator on the case. Professional distance settled over her like a cloak, transforming her into someone else entirely. Not the woman who'd poured her heart out over Italian food, but an executive with a job to do. Connor matched her tone, keeping his voice neutral. What was taken? Equipment, power tools, approximately $8,000 worth of materials according to your site manager's inventory. She pulled out a tablet, swiping to a marked screen. The theft occurred between 8 p.m. and 5 a.m. Security cameras were disabled, suggesting someone with knowledge of the site layout. You think it's an inside job? I think whoever did this knew exactly what they were looking for and how to avoid detection. Meredith's eyes scanned his face with professional assessment, mixing with something more personal. I need to interview your crew, get a sense of who might have financial problems, grudges, connections to criminal elements. Connor's jaw tightened. My guys are solid. I've worked with most of them for over a decade. I'm sure they are, but statistically, most construction site thefts involve current or former employees. She softened slightly, letting a hint of the real Meredith through the corporate facade. I'm not trying to attack your judgment. I'm trying to recover stolen property and prevent future incidents. He let her in, watching her assess his home with the trained eye of someone who read environments for a living. The analysis made him self-conscious about Harper's drawings on the fridge, the pile of unfolded laundry on the couch, the general lived-in chaos of a single father's house. Meredith didn't comment on the mess. Instead, she moved to the kitchen table, spreading out photos and documents with practiced efficiency. Walk me through the site security. Who has access codes? Who knows the camera positions? They spent an hour going through details, Connor providing information while trying not to notice how her hair fell forward when she leaned over documents, or the way she tapped her pen against her lips when thinking, or the familiar scent of her perfume cutting through the coffee and sawdust smell of his kitchen. I'll need contact information for your entire crew. Meredith typed notes into her tablet with efficient precision. Also, any subcontractors, delivery drivers, anyone who's been on site in the past month. Wade Sullivan has all that. I'll text him, have him send it to you directly. Connor pulled out his phone, composing the message while hyper-aware of her proximity. He's not going to like this. None of them will. Being questioned by investigators feels like an accusation, even when you're innocent. I'll be as discreet as possible. She tucked her tablet away, preparing to leave. Thank you for cooperating. I know this is awkward given everything. You're doing your job. I respect that. He walked her to the door, maintaining careful distance. For what it's worth, I hope you find whoever did this. Those tools represent weeks of work for some of these guys. Meredith paused on the threshold, silhouetted against the porch light. Connor, I want you to know I didn't request this case because of our connection. It was assigned to me randomly. If you'd prefer someone else handle it, no. The word came out more forcefully than intended. You're good at your job, and I want good work on this. Personal history doesn't matter compared to getting results. Something flickered across her expression. Gratitude, maybe, or relief. I'll keep you updated on the investigation. And Connor, she hesitated, the professional mask slipping slightly. The dinner the other night, I meant everything I said, but I understand if you need space to process. She left before he could respond, her sedan pulling away with deliberate slowness. Connor stood in his doorway watching taillights fade, wondering when his life had become so complicated. His phone rang minutes later. Vanessa, her voice tight with barely controlled anger. We need to talk about Harper. Ice flooded his veins. Is she okay? Did something happen? She's fine physically. The emphasis suggested other problems loomed. But she just spent 20 minutes telling me all about Miss Meredith, the nice lady who's friends with Daddy, and knows all about volcanoes, and is really pretty and makes Daddy smile. The betrayal hit hard. Harper had promised not to mention Meredith to her mother, understanding without being told that it would cause problems. But 7-year-olds couldn't keep secrets worth a damn, especially when excited about something. Meredith's a security consultant working a case involving my job site. Harper met her once briefly when Meredith stopped by to ask about protocols. It's not a big deal. The lie came easier than it should have. Practiced deception rolling off his tongue. Not a big deal? Vanessa's voice climbed an octave. You're introducing our daughter to the woman who broke your heart, the one you spent years being miserable over, and you think that's not a big deal? I didn't introduce them. Harper was home when Meredith came by on official business. They exchanged maybe 5 sentences. Another lie stacking on the first. You're making this into something it's not. Am I? Because Harper says Miss Meredith helped with her volcano project. That sounds like more than a 5-sentence interaction. Papers rustled in the background, Vanessa moving with agitated energy. I'm calling my lawyer Monday. We're modifying the custody arrangement. The threat crystallized the vague anxiety he'd been carrying since Saturday into sharp, immediate fear. On what grounds? I'm a good father. Harper's thriving. On the grounds that you're exposing our daughter to unstable romantic entanglements. Vanessa's tone turned cold and precise. Meredith left you once, Connor. What happens when she does it again and Harper's attached to her? You think our daughter can handle another abandonment after what she went through with me? The accusation stung because it mirrored his own fears, the ones he'd been trying to suppress since watching Meredith drive away Saturday night. I'm not in a relationship with Meredith. We're not dating. She's investigating a crime. But you want to be. Vanessa's voice shifted from angry to something more complex. Hurt mixed with resignation, mixed with bitter acceptance. I can hear it in your voice. You're still in love with her, just like you were throughout our entire marriage. Connor couldn't deny it, and the silence stretched long enough to serve as confirmation. That's what I thought. Vanessa's laugh held no humor. You know what the worst part is? I knew going in that you didn't love me. I thought I could make it enough. Thought if I was patient and supportive and everything she wasn't, you'd eventually choose me for real instead of just as a consolation prize. Rebecca, I'm sorry. He caught himself too late, using her middle name like he had during their marriage. Old habits dying hard. I never meant to hurt you. The apology felt insufficient, a band-aid on a wound that needed surgery. But you did. Every time you looked at me and I could see you wishing I was someone else. Every time you pulled away when I tried to get close. Every time you said you loved me and I could hear the lie underneath. She took a shaky breath, composing herself with visible effort. I deserve better than being someone's second choice. And Harper deserves a father who isn't distracted by his past. My past isn't interfering with Harper. She's my priority, always. He meant it, even as doubt crept in around the edges. You're right that I wasn't fair to you during our marriage. I should have been honest instead of pretending. But that doesn't mean I'm a bad father. I'm not saying you are. I'm saying you're about to make choices that could hurt our daughter. And I'm not going to stand by and watch it happen. Vanessa's tone shifted to something more formal, the voice she used for business discussions. Expect a call from my attorney. We'll discuss this through proper legal channels. The line went dead. Connor stood in his kitchen, phone still pressed to his ear, processing the wreckage of a conversation that had just blown up his carefully structured life. Friday morning brought Wade Sullivan to his door before 6 a.m., the crew leader's expression grim. We need to talk before the investigators show up. Connor poured coffee while Wade paced his kitchen, agitation evident in every movement. What's going on? Dallas Garrett. He's been acting weird all week. Jumpy, avoiding questions, disappeared for 2 hours yesterday during lunch break. Wade accepted the mug without sitting, too wired to stay still. I didn't think much of it until the detective called asking about financial problems among the crew. Dallas's gambling debts. Connor knew this already, had even loaned the kid money last year to help clear them. But he's not stupid enough to steal from his own site. You sure about that? Because I did some asking around and apparently those debts are worse than we knew. He's into a bookie for $22,000, and they're not the patient type. Wade finally sat, deflating with the weight of suspicion. I don't want to believe it either. Kid's been with us 3 years, never caused problems. But if he's desperate enough... The doorbell interrupted them. Meredith stood on the porch in business casual, notepad already out, looking every inch the professional investigator. Mr. Bridger, Mr. Sullivan. She nodded at them both with corporate courtesy that revealed nothing of their complicated history. Mr. Sullivan, I believe we spoke on the phone. Wade glanced between them, clearly sensing undercurrents, but too focused on the investigation to pursue them. The interview lasted 40 minutes. Meredith extracting information with practiced efficiency. Wade confirmed the camera blind spots, the security code rotation schedule, which crew members had worked late in the past week. He also reluctantly mentioned Dallas's financial situation. I want to be clear, I'm not accusing anyone. Wade's discomfort was obvious, loyalty warring with duty. But you asked about money problems, and Dallas is the only one I know who's in serious trouble. Meredith made notes without judgment, her professional mask firmly in place. I'll need to speak with Mr. Garrett. Can you have him contact me today? After Wade left, Meredith lingered in the doorway, the corporate facade slipping slightly to reveal the woman underneath. I heard about Vanessa, the custody threat. Small town, news travels fast. Guess Harper told her mother about meeting you. Connor leaned against the doorframe, exhaustion seeping into his bones. I'm sorry. I never meant to cause problems with your co-parenting situation. Genuine regret colored her words. If you need me to speak with Vanessa, explain that our contact has been purely professional. That would be a lie. He met her eyes, refusing to pretend. It stopped being purely professional the moment I agreed to dinner. We both know that. Meredith bit her lip, the gesture so familiar it hurt. What do you want me to do? I can back off, stay strictly business, disappear from your life again if that's what you need. I don't know what I need. The confession felt like weakness, but he was too tired to maintain pretenses. Part of me wants to see where this goes. The rest of me knows that's insane, that I'm risking everything I built for something that already proved it can't work. We're not the same people we were. She stepped closer, close enough that he could feel her body heat cutting through the morning chill. Maybe that's what needs to change for this to work. Accepting that we failed the first time because we weren't ready, not because we weren't right for each other. Connor's phone shattered the moment with its insistent buzzing, Ruth calling about Harper. He answered to find his daughter on the other end, voice small and scared, in a way that sent his protective instincts into overdrive. Daddy, Mommy's really mad. She says I'm not supposed to talk about Miss Meredith anymore. And she keeps asking questions about whether you have a girlfriend, and I don't know what to say. Harper's words tumbled out in a rush, 7-year-old panic evident. Did I do something wrong? No, sweetheart, you didn't do anything wrong. Connor moved away from Meredith, needing privacy for this conversation. Mommy's just worried about you, that's all. Sometimes adults get confused about things. Is Miss Meredith your girlfriend? Because Mommy says she is, but you said she was just a friend. The question held the weight of a child trying to navigate adult complexities beyond her understanding. I don't want you and Mommy to fight because of me. Listen to me very carefully, baby girl. None of this is your fault. Adult relationships are complicated, and sometimes grown-ups make mistakes or get scared or don't know how to talk to each other properly. But that has nothing to do with you. He could feel Meredith's presence behind him, listening, the weight of her attention like a physical thing. You're the most important person in my life. Everything I do is to make sure you're happy and safe. Promise? Harper's voice wavered between trust and fear. Promise. Now how about you and Grandma make those cookies you were talking about, and I'll come pick you up after work, okay? He injected false cheer into his tone, hoping it would transfer through the phone line. We'll have movie night, your choice. Harper brightened at the prospect, her resilience a reminder of why he fought so hard to protect her. They said their goodbyes, and Connor turned to find Meredith had moved to his kitchen table, giving him space for the conversation, but close enough that she'd heard every word. You're good with her, patient, present, everything a father should be. Meredith's observation carried no judgment, just quiet acknowledgement. She deserves that. Deserves better than parents who can't figure out how to put her first. He poured himself more coffee, the morning already feeling endless despite barely being 7 a.m. Vanessa's scared I'm going to repeat our marriage pattern with you, getting involved with someone I love more than I loved her, which will somehow hurt Harper. Is she wrong? The directness of the question deserved an honest answer. I don't know. I spent 6 years married to a woman I cared about but didn't love, and it damaged everyone involved. Now you're back, and I can feel myself falling into old patterns, and I'm terrified of making the same mistakes. Meredith stood, closing the distance between them until only inches separated their bodies. Then maybe we don't repeat patterns. Maybe we build something new, something neither of us has tried before. Like what? Like taking it slow. Like being honest about our fears instead of running from them. Like putting Harper first and making sure whatever happens between us doesn't hurt her. Meredith's hand rose, hovering near his face without quite making contact. I'm not asking for promises or commitments. I'm asking for a chance to prove I'm worth the risk. Connor's resolve crumbled under the weight of her proximity and his own loneliness. He closed the gap, capturing her lips in a kiss that felt like coming home after years of wandering lost. She responded with matching intensity, hands fisting in his shirt as a decade of separation compressed into this single moment of connection. When they broke apart, gasping, foreheads pressed together, both trembling from the force of emotions unleashed, the world felt fundamentally changed. Meredith's eyes shimmered with unshed tears. I missed you. I missed you so much. This is a mistake. Even as he spoke, Connor's hands refused to release her, holding tight like she might disappear if he let go. Vanessa's going to use this against me in court. Harper's going to get confused and hurt. Nothing good can come from this. Then let it be our mistake. Meredith kissed him again, softer this time, tender rather than desperate. Let's be honest about how messy and complicated this is, and choose it anyway. The kitchen clock ticked toward 7:30. Connor had a site to get to, materials to order, a crew to manage. Meredith had an investigation to pursue, interviews to conduct, evidence to process. The real world waited with all its demands and complications. But for these stolen moments, they let themselves exist in possibility rather than consequence, in hope rather than fear, in the fragile beginning of something that might, just might, be worth the risk. The kiss changed everything and nothing. Connor went to work with Meredith's taste still on his lips, trying to focus on inventory counts and foundation inspections while his mind replayed the way her fingers had tangled in his hair. The crew noticed his distraction. Wade raised an eyebrow when Connor measured the same beam 3 times, getting different numbers each attempt. You sick or something? Wade's concern carried an edge of suspicion. You've been off all morning. Didn't sleep well. The lies sat heavy on Connor's tongue, but the truth was too complicated to unpack on a construction site. Vanessa's pushing for a custody modification got me stressed. That much was honest enough. The legal papers had arrived by courier at 10 a.m., delivered to the site because Vanessa knew it would embarrass him in front of his crew. Dallas Garrett had watched the exchange with particular intensity, his nervousness spiking visibly when the courier mentioned court documents. Meredith arrived at lunch, her sedan pulling up to the site trailer with professional purpose. She'd changed from the casual clothes she'd worn at his house into full investigator mode. Slacks, blazer, badge prominent on her belt. The transformation was complete. No trace of the woman who'd kissed him 3 hours ago visible in her corporate demeanor. Mr. Garrett, I need to speak with you regarding the theft investigation. Her voice carried across the site, drawing attention from every crew member within earshot. Dallas went pale. At 24, he still had the gangly build of someone who hadn't quite grown into his frame, all knees and elbows and nervous energy. His hands shook as he set down his sandwich. I didn't do anything. Then you won't mind answering some questions. Meredith's tone gave nothing away, neither accusatory nor reassuring. We can do this here or at my office, your choice. The implication was clear. Cooperate voluntarily or be brought in officially. Dallas glanced at Connor, desperation written across his features, silently begging for intervention. Go with her, Dallas. Tell the truth and you'll be fine. Connor put more confidence into the words than he felt. If Dallas had stolen from the site, the truth would destroy him. They disappeared into the trailer, Meredith closing the door firmly behind them. The rest of the crew exchanged looks weighted with speculation and judgment. Marcus Williams, a grizzled carpenter who'd been in construction longer than Connor had been alive, spat tobacco juice into the dirt. Kid's guilty. You can see it written all over him. Marcus had the cynicism of someone who'd watched too many promising young workers self-destruct. Probably figured he could grab a few tools, pawn them, cover his debts. Tale as old as time. We don't know that. Connor defended Dallas reflexively, even as doubt gnawed at his certainty. Innocent until proven guilty. Sure, and I'm the King of England. Marcus returned to his lunch. The conversation closed as far as he was concerned. Wade pulled Connor aside, voice low enough that the others couldn't hear. If it is Dallas, what are you going to do? Kid's got potential, but if he stole from us, there's no coming back from that. Fire him, press charges, whatever Meredith recommends. Connor corrected himself quickly, aware of ears that might be listening. But I'm not throwing him under the bus until we have proof. Your call, boss. Just remember that loyalty goes both ways. You protect someone who betrayed the crew, and you'll lose their respect. Wade's warning carried the weight of experience. Sometimes you have to make hard choices. The trailer door opened 40 minutes later. Dallas emerged looking worse than when he'd entered, red-eyed, shoulders slumped, moving like a condemned man. Meredith followed at a professional distance, expression neutral. Mr. Garrett has agreed to provide fingerprints and alibi verification for the night in question. Her announcement was for the benefit of the crew, putting everyone on notice that the investigation was active and thorough. Thank you for your cooperation, Mr. Garrett. Dallas nodded mutely and stumbled toward his truck, clearly done with work for the day. Meredith caught Connor's eye, a subtle head tilt toward her car. He followed, maintaining enough distance to suggest official business rather than personal connection. Inside her vehicle, away from curious eyes, she dropped the investigator facade. He's lying about something. I don't know if it's the theft or just the gambling debts, but his story has holes you could drive a truck through. You think he did it? Connor kept his gaze forward, watching Dallas's truck peel out of the parking area with reckless speed. I think he knows more than he's saying. His alibi for that night is his girlfriend, who conveniently can't be reached for verification because she's visiting family in Oregon. Meredith flipped through her notes, pointing out inconsistencies. He also got defensive when I asked about his finances, claimed the debts were under control when every indicator suggests otherwise. Connor's jaw tightened. If Dallas was involved, it meant his judgment had failed. He'd hired the kid, trained him, defended him when others questioned his work ethic. The betrayal would sting on multiple levels. What's your next step? Talk to the girlfriend once she's back. Check pawn shops for the stolen tools. Pull Dallas's phone records to see if he was in contact with anyone suspicious. She paused, studying Connor's profile with an intensity that made his skin prickle. And try to keep professional distance from you, which is getting harder by the hour. The admission hung between them, heavy with implication. Connor turned to face her fully, taking in the slight flush to her cheeks, the way her fingers drummed against her notepad. Tells that betrayed nervousness beneath the professional exterior. This morning was a mistake. He forced the words out, needing to establish boundaries before they both got hurt. Vanessa's lawyers are going to paint me as an unfit father because I'm dating the woman who left me. If I give them ammunition by actually dating you, I could lose Harper. So what are you saying? Meredith's voice remained steady, but her knuckles whitened where she gripped the steering wheel. That we pretended didn't happen? Go back to being strangers? I'm saying we need to be smart about this. For Harper's sake, if nothing else. Connor rubbed his face, exhaustion pulling at every muscle. She's already confused about why her mother's upset. If she finds out I'm involved with you, and then the custody battle gets ugly, she'll blame herself. Meredith's professional mask cracked, revealing hurt underneath. I'm not asking you to choose between me and your daughter. Harper comes first. I get that. But don't tell me that kiss meant nothing, because I can see in your eyes that you're lying. It meant everything. That's the problem. The confession escaped before he could stop it. 10 years ago, you were the only thing that mattered. Then you left and I had to learn how to function without you. I built a life, had a child, created something stable. Now you're back, and I can feel all those walls I built starting to crumble. Maybe they need to crumble. She reached across the console, hand covering his. Maybe you've been protecting yourself so hard that you forgot how to actually live. The contact sent electricity through his system, a jolt of connection that terrified and exhilarated in equal measure. Connor pulled away before he could do something stupid like kiss her again in broad daylight where anyone could see. I have to get back to work. He reached for the door handle, needing distance to think clearly. Keep me updated on the investigation. And Meredith, he paused, hand on the door. Thank you for being gentle with Dallas. Whatever he did or didn't do, he's still just a kid trying to survive. Her expression softened. That's one of the things I always loved about you. You see the best in people, even when they don't deserve it. Connor climbed out of the car before he could respond, knowing that any reply would only make leaving harder. Behind him, Meredith sat in her sedan for a long moment before driving away, and he felt the loss of her presence like a physical ache. Monday morning arrived with Dallas Garrett at the construction site an hour early, looking like he hadn't slept in days. Dark circles ringed his eyes, his clothes hung loose like he'd lost weight, and his hands trembled as he approached Connor near the equipment trailer. I need to tell you something, before Detective Lancaster figures it out and I end up in jail. Dallas's voice cracked with stress. What did you do, Dallas? I didn't steal the stuff. I swear on my mother's grave I didn't steal it. Tears pooled in Dallas's eyes, threatening to spill over. But I know who did. And I helped them plan it because they promised to clear my debts if I gave them the security code and camera locations. The confession hit like a physical blow. Connor had been hoping for Dallas's innocence, clinging to the belief that his judgment hadn't failed so completely. Who? My bookie, guy named Ricky Salazar, runs a gambling operation out of a bar in the East End. Dallas's words tumbled out in a rush, desperate confession from someone drowning in consequences. He said if I helped him hit the site, we'd call it even on what I owed. I didn't think about what it would mean for you, for the crew, for everyone who depended on those tools. I just wanted the debt gone. Connor's jaw clenched so hard his teeth ached. You gave criminals access to a site I'm responsible for. Do you understand how much damage this could do to Morrison Construction? To Jim, who gave us both a chance when nobody else would? I know. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Dallas swiped at his eyes, trying to maintain some shred of dignity. I'm going to turn myself in. Tell Detective Lancaster everything, but I wanted you to hear it from me first, because you've always been straight with me, and I owe you that much. You're damn right you do. Connor wanted to yell, to rage at the stupidity and selfishness that had led Dallas to this point. But the kid was 24 and terrified and already destroyed by his own choices. Anger wouldn't fix anything. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to call Detective Lancaster right now. Tell her everything you just told me. Then you're going to cooperate fully with her investigation. Help her build a case against Salazar, and hope the DA offers you a deal for your cooperation. Dallas's voice was small, already knowing the answer. My job? Gone. Today. You betrayed everyone here. Connor felt each word like pulling teeth, hating the necessity of it. I'll write you a reference for your work quality, nothing about this incident, but I can't keep you on the crew. The guys would never accept. Dallas nodded, defeated. Can I use your phone? Mine's about to get shut off because I couldn't pay the bill. Connor handed over his cell, watching as Dallas made the call that would likely send him to jail as an accessory to theft. Meredith answered professionally, her tone shifting when Dallas identified himself and started confessing. She instructed him to stay put. She'd be there within 20 minutes to take his formal statement. The wait was excruciating. Dallas sat on the ground near the trailer, head in his hands, occasionally shaking with silent sobs. Connor busied himself with work he didn't need to do, checking inventory that had already been counted, organizing tools that were already organized. When Meredith's sedan pulled up, relief and dread twisted together in his gut. She emerged in full investigator mode, badge, recording device, notepad. This wasn't the woman who'd kissed him or called his ex-wife on his behalf. This was Detective Lancaster, here to do a job, regardless of personal complications. Mr. Garrett, Mr. Bridger, she acknowledged them both with corporate courtesy. Mr. Garrett, you indicated you have information regarding the theft on this property. I'm prepared to take your statement. Please be aware that anything you say can be used in legal proceedings. Dallas nodded, wiping his face with his sleeve. I understand. I want to tell you everything. Meredith led him to her car, conducting the interview in her front seat with the recorder running and Connor standing close enough to hear through the open door. Dallas's confession was thorough. Dates, times, how he'd provided security information to Salazar, where the stolen materials had been taken, even details about the gambling operation that had gotten him into this mess. Throughout it all, Meredith maintained perfect professionalism. She asked clarifying questions, made notes, showed no reaction to the information beyond what was necessary for the investigation. Only once did her mask slip. A brief glance at Connor when Dallas mentioned the debts totaled nearly $22,000, almost double what Connor had been told. The interview lasted 90 minutes. By the time Meredith finished, the rest of the crew had arrived and were watching from a careful distance, understanding without being told that something significant was happening. Meredith stepped out of her vehicle, addressing Connor in a voice meant to carry. Mr. Bridger, thank you for your cooperation. Mr. Garrett has provided valuable information that should help us recover the stolen property and make arrests. I'll be in touch with updates. She drove away with Dallas still in her passenger seat, heading to the police station for formal processing. Connor turned to face his crew, all of them staring with various expressions of confusion, anger, and betrayal. Wade spoke first, his disappointment evident. Dallas was involved? He gave information to the thieves in exchange for debt forgiveness. Connor kept his explanation brief, factual. He's cooperating with the investigation. I've terminated his employment, effective immediately. Marcus spat into the dirt. Knew that kid was trouble from day one. Enough. Connor's voice cracked like a whip, silencing further commentary. Dallas made terrible choices, and he's paying for them. We move forward from here. I'll need someone to take over his sections. Wade, can you reassign his work? The crew dispersed to their tasks, the incident providing fodder for gossip that would last weeks. Connor retreated to the trailer, needing a moment alone to process the morning's revelations. His phone rang, Meredith calling from her office number rather than her cell. Salazar has a record, multiple theft charges, assault, running an illegal gambling operation. She dispensed information in clipped, professional tones, but underneath Connor heard exhaustion. Dallas's cooperation is going to be crucial for building a case. The DA's office is already talking about a plea deal, reduced charges in exchange for testimony. Will he do jail time? Connor found himself hoping the answer was no, despite everything. Probably probation and community service, given his cooperation and clean record prior to this. Papers rustled in the background. Connor, I'm sorry. I know you vouched for him, saw potential. This has to hurt. I keep thinking I should have seen the signs. The nervousness, the money problems, all of it was right there, and I just didn't want to believe someone I trusted could betray us. He sank into the trailer's worn office chair, suddenly exhausted. Makes me question my judgment about a lot of things. Your judgment is fine. You saw someone struggling and tried to help. That's not weakness, it's compassion. Her voice softened, investigator mode giving way to something more personal. The world needs more people who believe in second chances, even when they get burned sometimes. Is that what we're doing? Second chances? The question carried double meaning, referring to both Dallas and themselves. Meredith hesitated, clearly aware they were crossing from professional to personal territory on a work call. I'd like to think so, but that's a conversation for another time, another place. Agreed. Connor glanced out the trailer window at his crew, all of them pointedly not looking his direction while obviously talking about him. I need to get back to work. Keep me posted on the investigation. Always. A pause. Then she added quietly, "Take care of yourself, Connor." The line went dead. Connor sat in the silence of the trailer, surrounded by blueprints and invoices and all the mundane paperwork of running a construction site, feeling like his personal life was spiraling beyond his control. That evening, Harper's school called. She'd gotten into a fight during recess, pushed another student who'd been teasing her about having divorced parents. The principal's voice on the phone carried disappointment and concern in equal measure. Connor arrived to find Harper sitting in the office, tear-stained and defiant. The other child, a boy named Trevor with a bloody nose, glared from across the room while his mother berated the principal about violence and proper supervision. "Harper never acts out like this." Principal Morrison gestured to his office. "Can we speak privately, Mr. Bridger?" Inside the office, Harper's teacher, Mrs. Patterson, waited with a folder of concerning observations. Harper had been distracted in class, not completing homework, seeming anxious and withdrawn. The fight was just the most visible symptom of a larger problem. "Is everything all right at home?" Mrs. Patterson's concern was genuine, motherly. Harper mentioned that her mother was upset about something, that there might be changes to her living situation. Connor's heart sank. He'd tried to shield Harper from the custody drama, but 7-year-olds absorb more than adults realized. "We're going through some adjustments. I'll make sure Harper gets the support she needs." The meeting ended with a suspension. 3 days at home, a harsh punishment that would mean Connor scrambling to arrange childcare during work hours. Ruth agreed immediately when he called, telling him to stop apologizing and get Harper home safe. He drove Harper home in silence, neither of them ready to discuss what had happened. Finally, in the safety of their kitchen, Harper broke down completely. "Trevor said kids with divorced parents are broken, that we don't have real families." Harper's words came out between hiccuping sobs. "And I got so mad because we do have a real family. It's just different." And I pushed him. Connor pulled her close, letting her cry against his shirt while his own heart broke for her pain. "Baby girl, Trevor's wrong. Family isn't about who lives in the same house or whether parents are married. Family is about love and showing up and being there for each other. And by that measure, we have a real and strong family. But what if mommy makes me live with her all the time? What if I don't get to see you?" Harper's worst fears spilled out in hiccuping sobs. "What if everything changes and I don't have a say?" "Listen to me." Connor tilted her chin up, forcing eye contact. "No matter what happens with the custody arrangement, you will always be my daughter. Always. Nothing can change that. Not lawyers or judges or anyone else. You're stuck with me forever. Promise?" Her voice was so small, so vulnerable. "On everything I hold sacred, I promise." He meant it with every fiber of his being. "Now how about we make some dinner, and tomorrow we'll figure out what to do about school. Okay?" "Okay." Harper nodded, wiping her face with her sleeve. "Can we have spaghetti? I know it's not Thursday, but I want comfort food." They cooked together, Harper measuring ingredients while Connor handled the stove. The normalcy of the routine provided comfort, a reminder that some things remain constant even when everything else felt uncertain. After Harper was in bed, Connor sat on his porch with a beer he didn't really want, staring at the stars and trying to process the wreckage of his day. Dallas's betrayal, Harper's fight, the constant pressure of Vanessa's legal threats, Meredith's complicated presence in his life. All of it pressed down with crushing weight. His phone buzzed. A text from Meredith. "Heard about Harper's suspension. Is she okay?" Connor stared at the message, wondering how she'd found out so quickly. Small town, he supposed. News traveled through unofficial channels faster than formal ones. He typed back, "She's dealing with a lot." Pushed a kid who said mean things about divorce. The response came almost immediately. "Kids can be cruel. She's lucky to have you." Connor wanted to accept the comfort, wanted to pour out everything to someone who would understand, who knew him well enough to see through his defenses. But doing so would mean crossing another line, deepening their connection when he was supposed to be maintaining distance. He settled for, "Thanks, long day." Another text arrives seconds later. "If you need someone to talk to, I'm here. No pressure, no expectations, just offering." The kindness in the gesture nearly undid him. Connor wanted desperately to say yes, to invite her over, to lose himself in her presence and forget everything else for a few hours. But that path led to complications he couldn't afford. "Appreciate it, need to process solo for now." A pause, then, "Understood, take care, Connor." He set the phone aside, finished his beer, and went to check on Harper one last time before bed. She slept curled around her stuffed rabbit, face peaceful in a way it hadn't been while awake. He stood in her doorway, watching her breathe, making a silent vow. Whatever happened with Meredith, whatever Vanessa's lawyers threw at him, whatever challenges emerged from the chaos of his life, Harper would be protected. Her happiness, her stability, her sense of security would come first. Always. 10 days crawled by in careful avoidance. Connor threw himself into work with single-minded intensity, but the physical labor couldn't quiet his mind. Every night he lay awake, thinking about Meredith. The way she'd kissed him, the way she'd protected his custody rights without being asked, the way she'd handled Dallas with professionalism and compassion. He was falling for her all over again. No, he'd never stop falling, and that terrified him more than anything. Wade noticed the change but didn't comment directly, just kept a closer eye on Connor's measurements and double-checked his calculations. Dallas's case moved forward. The DA offered probation in exchange for testimony against Salazar. Harper returned to school, subdued but functional, the fight serving as a release valve for pressure that had been building for weeks. Meredith respected the distance he'd requested. No calls beyond case updates, no texts except professional courtesy. The investigation wrapped up. Salazar was arrested, stolen goods recovered, charges filed. Lancaster Security Solutions delivered their final report to Morrison Construction and moved on to other clients. Connor told himself this was for the best. Clean break, everyone moving forward with their lives. He didn't believe it for a second. On the 11th morning, Vanessa showed up at his house. She looked different than he'd ever seen her. No designer clothes, no carefully applied makeup, just jeans and a sweater, hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. She looked tired, human, vulnerable. "We need to talk." She glanced toward the house where Harper was watching cartoons. Privately, they stepped onto the porch, Connor's defenses immediately up, expecting another attack about custody. But Vanessa's body language wasn't aggressive. If anything, she seemed deflated. "I've been in therapy, 4 sessions now." Vanessa crossed her arms, not quite meeting his gaze. "My therapist helped me see something important. I'm not trying to control your life because I care about Harper. I'm doing it because I'm insecure." Connor waited, unsure where this was going. "I almost didn't come today. Part of me still wants to fight, wants to prove I'm the better parent." Vanessa's voice wavered slightly. "But my therapist asked me one question that changed everything. Is this about protecting Harper or protecting your ego?" And I couldn't answer her honestly, because deep down, I knew. This was never about Harper's well-being. It was about my fear that she'll love Meredith more than me. "You're not losing her. Harper loves you." Connor kept his tone gentle, recognizing genuine pain when he saw it. "But she's also 7. She needs stability and consistency. The custody threat isn't giving her that. It's just making her anxious." "I know." Vanessa finally looked at him directly. "That's what my therapist said, that I'm projecting my own fears onto the situation and making it worse. So I'm dropping the custody modification. Permanently." Connor blinked, certain he'd misheard. "What?" "I'm keeping things as they are. 50-50 split. You and me co-parenting like adults instead of fighting through lawyers." She took a breath, clearly struggling with what came next. "And if you are involved with Meredith, or if you want to be, I won't interfere." Harper drew a picture at my house last week. You, me, her, and a woman she labeled Miss Meredith. She's already accepted Meredith as part of her world. Fighting it will only hurt her. Connor's world tilted on its axis. The obstacle that had kept him from Meredith, the fear that had governed his choices for weeks, simply evaporated. Vanessa, I don't know what to say. Say you'll be happy. Say you'll take care of Harper and make sure she knows she's loved by both of us, even if we couldn't make our marriage work. Vanessa moved toward her car, done with the conversation. And Connor? I'm seeing someone too. His name is David. He's kind and patient, and he makes me feel things I never felt with you. And I'm okay with that now. We both deserve to be loved fully, not as second choices or consolation prizes. Thank you. Connor's voice was rough with emotion. For growing up, for putting Harper first, for everything. Vanessa smiled genuinely for the first time in years. Be happy, Connor. You've earned it. She drove away, leaving Connor standing on his porch in the morning sunlight, processing a conversation that had just fundamentally altered his reality. The legal threat was gone. Vanessa had given her blessing. The obstacles that had kept him paralyzed with fear had dissolved. All that remained was his own courage. His phone sat in his pocket, Meredith's number stored but unused for 10 days. Connor pulled it out, stared at her contact information, heart pounding like he was 18 again. He dialed. She answered on the second ring, surprise evident in her voice. Connor, can you come over tonight? After Harper's asleep? The words came out in a rush. We need to talk, really talk, about what we're doing and what we want, and whether any of this is even possible. Silence stretched across the line, long enough that Connor wondered if she'd hung up. Then, I'll be there at 9. Connor spent the rest of the day in a state of nervous anticipation. Ruth took Harper for the afternoon, giving him a knowing look but asking no questions. He cleaned his house, changed his shirt twice, paced his kitchen like a teenager before prom. At 8:45, headlights swept across his windows. Meredith was early, just like always. Connor opened the door before she could knock. She stood on his porch in jeans and a sweater, hair loose around her shoulders, looking uncertain and hopeful in equal measure. Hi. Hi. He stepped aside, letting her in. They sat in his living room, the same room where they'd first discussed the theft investigation. But the energy between them now was completely different. No professional masks, no pretense of distance. Just two people trying to figure out if they could build something from the ruins of what they'd lost. Vanessa dropped the custody modification. Connor spoke first, needing to clear away the obstacles before they could move forward. She's in therapy, working through her own issues. She even gave us her blessing, if there's an us to bless. Meredith's breath caught. Connor, what are you saying? I'm saying I've been an idiot. A scared, self-protective idiot who used every excuse available to keep you at arm's length. He moved closer, close enough to see the pulse jumping in her throat. You asked me to be brave enough to risk my heart, and I wasn't. I hid behind concerns about Harper, about Vanessa, about the past. But the real problem was me being too afraid to trust that you meant it when you said you'd changed. Have you changed your mind? Her voice was barely a whisper. No, I've changed me. Connor reached for her hand, lacing their fingers together. I watched Dallas get a second chance. The DA offered him probation because he was brave enough to admit his mistakes and try to make them right. I watched Vanessa grow enough to put Harper's needs above her own insecurities. And I realized everyone around me is choosing courage over fear. Everyone except me. Connor. I don't want to be the guy who plays it safe anymore. I don't want to protect myself so much that I forget how to live. He pulled her closer until their foreheads touched. So I'm asking you, Meredith Lancaster, will you give me a second chance? A chance to love you the way you deserve to be loved 10 years ago. To build the life we should have had, but better, stronger, because we both learn from our mistakes. Meredith's tears fell freely now, running down her cheeks unchecked. Yes, 1,000 times yes. They kissed with the desperation of two people who'd found each other twice and refused to waste another moment on fear. When they finally broke apart, both laughing and crying, Connor felt something in his chest unlock. A weight he'd carried for a decade finally lifting. No more running. Meredith's arms wrapped around him, anchoring them both. I'm here for real this time, for as long as you'll have me. They sat intertwined on his couch, talking until dawn crept through the windows. About Harper and how to introduce this relationship properly. About Vanessa and co-parenting boundaries. About Meredith's company and Connor's career, and how to blend two lives that had diverged for a decade. It wouldn't be easy. There would be challenges, adjustments, moments of doubt. But for the first time since she'd walked back into his life, Connor felt genuine hope. They'd been given something rare, a second chance, and this time they wouldn't waste it. The sun rose over Denver, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose. Connor held Meredith close, breathing in her scent, feeling her heartbeat against his chest. Outside, the world was waking up. Inside, they were building something new from the ashes of something old. Sometimes the scariest thing is exactly what we need to do. Sometimes you just have to find each other again, at a different time, as different people, and build something new, better, stronger, from the ashes of what once was. And for the first time in 10 years, Connor Bridger believed in forever again.